Right, so welcome to the Valhalla Clan Golden Chair. So I got the cat shifting around on my lap. Got Smeagol here as the light blue Romans player, the bottom of the map, up against Eka as the yellow Greeks player at the top of the map. So funnily enough, this is the same matchup that I played Eka in the semi-final for game number 1. And we got 2 new members to the clan. They both only really joined at around January this year. And both players getting ready for a spearman rush. Eka having to take a really forward, dangerous, long distance hunt position. So he's slightly down on the starting food because he's just got this massive travel time. And on top of that, it's really easy for him to be pushed off this position if he falls behind on the spear rush. But, being Greek, he does have a slight advantage. He is going to get his initial spear a little bit quicker than Smeagol, just through civ differences. So Romans only starting with 150 wood, Greeks starting with 200. So they only need to gather 50 to actually get their barracks building behind their initial storehouse. So Smeagol's going to see this. I think Eka's actually still only really greedy scouted. I think he's cleared 2 hunts. He's found another gold. I think he tends to sort of play quite a greedy scout, similar to myself. And you know, truth be told, at the end of the day, it's probably slightly more efficient to scout this way because you're not having to then double back and find your second and third hunt. Like looking at Smeagol's hunting route, he's come up this side, and he has actually found a second hunt over here, so that's good. So ideally you want to find at least 2 hunts, just because your first one you're going to chew through that really quickly, and if you're using your scout in your fight, a lot of the time you can't really just pull him away to the far side of the map. So Smeagol, pair of spears, Eka on 3, but he's being a little hesitant at the moment. I don't think he wants to force the issue here, because Smeagol's starting hunt is in the most ideal spot for him. It's shielded by wood on both sides, and it's in the back of his base. Well, Eka can't really afford to leave his own hunt undefended, because it's actually quite a distance away from his town centre, and it's in front of his base. So even though Eka's got the spear advantage, all Smeagol really has to do is just sort of park his spears on top of his hunt, and this can just sort of drag out, and both players will be forced to really age up before anything happens here. I'm going to have to go and let the cat out in a sec, otherwise he's just going to keep on meowing. Little bastard's been sitting around in here for a while now. Don't want to miss the initial spear push, but it looks as though Eka not yet pushing the issue. Although he's bringing everything together, he's got his scout with his spears as well, so that's always a good tell of a player about to take a fight, because it means they've got this giant health pool of a scout. Eka not going to be able to pinch the cows there. So Smeagol, 7 spears here. Eka's only got 6, but oh, here we go, he's got another one. 7, 8. So he should have a slight advantage overall with the spear count. They're going to have the same damage. Health pool slightly favours Romans. Ooh, and that's rough for Eka. Taking a lot of damage on that first spear. And on another, taking the first loss there. While Smeagol, a lot of low spears, but overall I think this is going alright for him. He's selectively microing down individual targets. He's got a bit of splash damage across 4 of these guys here. But for now, everyone's actually focusing, which is good for him. Not so great for Eka, and he's also got much more in the way of walking distance here. Not a huge amount, actually, but I mean, the Castellum, it's really within a screen, whereas that barracks, sort of about 2 screens away. But yeah, that spearman snare locked, because Smeagol's got 2 or 3 spears chasing him, so he's not going to be able to make it out of that. In that situation, sometimes you probably are just best off just trying to get one more hit in, and then just eating the loss. But it's sort of hard to weigh up. if it's only one spear chasing, oftentimes you're fine. You can actually break out of the snare. So Eka and Smeagol, both aging. I think Eka's almost a whole villager in front in terms of when he started it. Yes, 21 vills to Smeagol's 22. Although, I wonder if Smeagol's just been slightly slower on a vill, because he does have that engineer as well, so I think that's gonna... Oh no, yeah, they'll be actually the same there. So Eka, slightly faster with the age up. And the next villager. Smeagol up a villager, but I think that's the engineer. So both players, good number of spears still. 7 for Eka, 8 for Smeagol now, so he's taking the advantage there. I think he did come out on top with the initial spear trade. And I don't really like this TC position for Eka. I mean, it does secure that hunt, but at the same time he's got 2 at the back, and Smeagol was looking to sit on this hunt. He's sort of gone to the wrong one to start with, but Eka's actually looking to expand onto it. So Eka's going to lose like 10 wood. He's going to lose a villager. Things couldn't be going better for Smeagol. So yeah, this town center for Eka, I think he'll be able to get it up safely, but again, I don't know if it's the greatest spot to have a town center. It's quite an open spot. It does sort of shield this deer and this gold. But at the same time, I feel like if Eka had it in this back corner, it'd do a better job of protecting his hunts. This is probably better for a market when he goes to age 3 as well, without having to worry about his age 3 town center placement. So Smeagol trying to do a little bit of damage, but now with hypers in the mix for Eka, it means that he's going to have to retreat. So he's got his auxiliary camp. He wants to be able to get slingers to follow up behind his legionary. He's not going to play the pure melee opening with with Romans, which is quite common for them to go Praetorium. Norse actually have a similar opening where you just pretty much play around, yeah, age 2 melee cavalry and your infantry. Basically forego getting the counter ranged as long as you can. If not, just outright skipping them until you take age 3 and then just using, you know, bowmen and a anti-range cavalry. So 30 vills to 33. Eka actually slightly down on the vill count. 31 to 33 now. And Smeagol's actually having some really nice engagements here, although I think if the Toxotes doesn't get picked off by the slinger, it is actually going to go Eka's way now. All those spears, not so good against Hypaspis. Well, there's only one legionary in the mix there to deal with the infantry. There's already Sari production here, so Smeagol going for slingers this early on might be to his own detriment, just because the Greek player, Eka, has managed to slip in that stables already, so he can really shield these Toxotes, really threaten these slingers. But for the Roman player, it's sort of hard to justify going to the Decurion too early. Sometimes you might even just be best off playing around 2 barracks. But someone like Eka is going to follow up their first barracks with their range. They're not going to stuff around and get a second barracks themselves against most matchups. So yeah, I mean, you can sort of argue slingers are good, but at the same time, there's already more Tox than there are slingers. And there is the Saris there, so they can clean these guys up really quick. The front line for Smeagol also a little bit lacking there, so the Decurion goes down. That's a really expensive loss. And yeah, Roman early game, it's honestly something, it's a guessing game. I'm going to have to get this door open. Give me 2 sec. Alright, so I've let the cat out. And Smeagol's going to go for a Decurion raid. So these guys hit really, really hard. They are very expensive and they're the slowest cavalry, so you've got to be very careful. This is basically the same as having 3 Asabara, except the Asabara are slow. So Smeagol shouldn't want to actually force the issue here because he's lacking that cavalry. It's good front line, and Ekka's kept up spear production. He does have hypers still in the mix, but he's mostly training spears now. He's up to double range. So now that he's got a few Sari in the mix, he knows he can probably get away with ramping up the Tox production and then just completely folding Smeagol's front line if he can here. Smeagol, on the other hand, is going to have to try and get as much value out of this as he can, and this is a great spot for him to hit. He's denying that final starting hunt. Picked off a villager, so he's going to cut into the gather time, and also cut in some more with these guys running away. And that's going to hurt Smeagol a little. He's not going to, Ekka a little. He's not going to be able to maintain double Vil production and Sari production through all this. So it looks like he's actually cut a couple of villagers there. So Ekka 54 Vils, Smeagol 54, so he's slightly lost that lead he had. Ekka in the meanwhile raiding one of Smeagol's hunts, so I think he may have actually got a couple of villagers there because he was up on Vils. 55 to 53 now, so I think Smeagol might have picked up a couple more here, and we've got an engagement going on. Not a huge amount of infantry for Smeagol here. He's really been pumping out those Decurions. He's switched to a armory now. He hasn't actually added a second barracks or second praetorium. Or Ekka, our Greeks player, didn't go up to double range. It's still barracks, stables. Again, added his armory and academy there. Smeagol, a nice harass at the gold mine of Ekka. Having to retreat, but these guys, they've got regen. He pulls them out without being snared by the spearmen, so that's always the main imperative. If you get snare locked, you're going to lose one of these guys, and they're 155 resources, so they're worth 2.5 spearmen. So, well, 2.5 infantry basically. A lot of range this early on are also only worth that much. So Smeagol's actually, he wasn't taking the greatest of fights, but his harass behind this has been great. It's really slowed down Ekka here in this second age. And Greek Age 2 is really sort of tough to deal with. They got one of the best Age 2 compositions, while even going Quick Age 3 in some matchups can still be a benefit. The Slingers getting picked off here. These guys are only cheap though, they're only 50 resources, so losing them is probably preferable to losing anything else, considering the Legionaries are 65. But Smeagol's going to want to try and focus down the Toxotes as best he can with these guys. Even though the front lines are fairly even, overall, Smeagol coming out on top. He's actually taken out the Greek front line, so Ekka having a retreat. Armory upgrades. We got ranged armor for Smeagol, ranged damage for Ekka. So both players' upgrades pretty much being there to just cancel out the other's upgrade at this point. Smeagol trying to get to Age 3. Ekka, a really solid production queue there, actually cutting villages over army, but at the moment I honestly think he could just cancel a cycle of spears and then make sure he's got double Vil production. So perhaps a slight decision error there. He's down by 8 Vils overall, while Smeagol aging up. Smeagol's army size going to be slightly lacking in terms of population to Ekka's. Oh, and this is not great for Smeagol, because he's going to be losing that spear. Losing that Decurion to a single spear. So that's a good defensive effort there for Ekka. Not over-investing in the spears, but it's just enough that he's going to pick off these really expensive raiding units. Decurions, they look like they should be a great tank, and they are against anything that's not a spearman. Against spearmen, well, they're a giant resource dump, unfortunately. That's the problem with big, flashy, expensive shit in this game. The counter system just really... Oh, there's a nice Raid, meanwhile, the main army's engaging here, and Smeagol actually opting to try and take out the raiding Saris rather than trying to deal with the army, and this is actually a nice fight for Eka, although the Decurions now coming in to back up Smeagol, and this will really make the difference here. I was going to say, if it weren't for all these guys, it would have been a really tough fight for Smeagol, but as it stands, Eka really running out of a front line. All those spears clattering into the legionaries before the Decurions come in. Now the Decurions are really getting thinned out. Oh, I don't think Eka needed to shift there. I think he slightly misstepped, but now we've got Eka's in the mix here for Smeagol. Eka up by 30 population though, so Smeagol gonna want to try and get a few lines of these Ekas out in the Ekes out in the field against Eka. God, that's hard to say. And get some bowmen of his own, because I mean the slingers, obviously they're going to be a counter to the Tox, but at least the bowmen, like the Tox, are going to be a great generalist damage unit, whereas the slingers, their general damage is pretty shitty. It's their counter damage where they really shine. But right now, Smeagol, his town centers are actually taking shots at these Tox, so they're well positioned to actually keep all the production for Smeagol safe here. We've got a perfect little triangle set up, and Smeagol able to guard a lot of resources, really building towards Eka, who sort of was having to do the same out of, I think he thought, necessity to guard his early hunts, because he's already cleared that one. Both of our players have just about chewed through all their hunts, at the stage where they're now just getting the last few sets of berries, even looking at adding farms. And Scorpio production starting for Smeagol. He's got double workshop there. Added another Praetorium and Castellum. I think he might only have the one auxiliary camp. Eka, meanwhile, he's got the ranged barracks. Got 3 barracks, 2 range, 2 stable, 3 stables. And for now, Eka, a really good Tox count, but he's got to replenish his Sari and his spear counts. He's still got to take age 3 here, whereas Smeagol does have that tech and 3rd town center advantage, although he's not producing 3 villages at a time. I think he's also struggling for the food overall. Both of our players will be wanting to make transitions to farms. Eka having pretty much already done so. Players starting to run dry on food sources. Basically, once they get this army remax here, I think they'll, pretty much have to be just about all farms. A lot of eco techs, or pretty much all the age 2 techs except for Chisel for Eka. And same for Smeagol. He's still got to get plow though, which he probably hasn't needed to do just yet. He isn't as farm dependent yet, which is a bit weird considering he's probably been investing more into range. Both our players should have all their age 2 upgrades. Smeagol getting age 3 armor. Eka, no age 3 upgrades for his army yet, so Smeagol's actually going to take a slight lead there. Sari raid's going to be a bit annoying, but at the same time Ekes can deal with them. I'm not sure who actually comes out ahead in terms of Prodromos versus Ekes, but I know Ekes are marginally more flexible in fights, less flexible as a raider, because Ekes, they actually have a bonus counter against ranged units as well as their cav counter, where Prodromos have a counter against siege, and then when they get champion upgrade against buildings. But Eka is leading in terms of population here, so Smeagol might want to try and tower up and just pull his army back at this stage, because truth be told he is down by about 45 population. Gonna have to be careful here. He does have that armory upgrade bonus, but that's a nice surround for the Ekes. Not a huge number of them though, and there's not much else of a front line here for Smeagol, although he is backed up onto his production buildings, so he is going to be able to pump out defenders. Eka still 35 or 32 population ahead at the moment. Vil counts 55 to 77. So Smeagol's actually well down on villager population here. I think there might have been some sniped in the midst of this fight. Eka would not be surprising me if, yeah, he was trying to get a little bit of raiding done while these fights were going on. 77 to 58 Vil count. Smeagol, triple Vil production once again. Eka now getting triple Vil production. He's probably going to add another 10 villagers though, and then leave it at that, because I think he's going to want to try and flesh out his army size, get to 180 pop, and try and finish this before he goes to age 4. I mean, I think there's a good chance it still does go to age 4, but it's going to come down to how well Smeagol defends the next probably 2 fights, I'd say. If he can defend well and maybe raid while defending, doesn't have to be a lot, doesn't want to over-invest in raiding while trying to actually fight. But if you can send an Ekkas or 2, clean up a couple of villages while Ekkas trying to actually commit to a fight, or even have Eka try and raid him and then clean it up with his defense of, yeah, Ekkas and spears. I think he can worm his way back into this game, but it's going to be tough. He's still down 30 pop overall, although most of that is in eco. So 83 to 64 Vil count. It's a big difference, but Smeagol's eco, I think, isn't that much more than Eka's in terms of being able to sustain replenishing this army. It's only going to make it difficult trying to go to age 4. But he's going to need to rely on Eka getting a bit too frisky with these raiding units. But the cavalry, this is serving a purpose here, because this is giving Eka the chance to get close with his ram and to try and collapse on top of the production buildings here with the rest of his army. These raiders really just preventing... Sorry, the raiding cavalry, the Saris and the Prodromus, just preventing Smeagol from doing anything cheeky here with the tower and then taking over the food. So Eka, ready. Push for good. He's only got age 2 upgrades though. He's got age 3 damage coming in, while age 3 melee armor for Smeagol's on the way. So Smeagol's still actually leading by pretty much a whole armory upgrade. But he's now lost that 3rd town center. The Rams making this difficult, because without much of a melee front line, there's not a lot of damage being done to the Rams by the Scorpios. Smeagol's actually trying to use to thin out the army of Eka there, and Eka taking game number 1. Yeah, true, that was a bit rough for him. I probably should have noticed that.